Hello YouTube, Jason here again with another video. This is my telephone setup. I promised you all in an earlier video that I would do a video on my phone setup. So this isn't going to be have actual images of my setup itself, just because I'm kind of in a temporary place and they're not all out and they're not all in place. So I will go through and show images I found online, and I'll show how everything's wired together. And I'll do a video later on in the fall with an actual video of the whole system and all the phones themselves. So let's go ahead and get into what I have. So I have two of these black Western Electric 500 phones. One of them has a working bell and the other one does not. The one that's working is the phone that I use by my desk. I really like it a lot. I really like the Western Electric 500 style phone. The G-type handset is very comfortable on my shoulder and in my hand. I really like that. I also have a Northern Electric Galleon Bakelite phone. This one is really heavy. I like it a lot. It's nice and shiny. Not as shiny as the other one. I kind of got it all cleaned up. And I really like it. The handset is really heavy. I'm not partial on that handset just because it doesn't rest very well on your shoulder as the G-type handset does. This is the phone that my roommate uses. The bell on this one also does not work. Then I have this Northern Telecom 500. It is the beige phone, much like the 500, or much like the Western Electric 500. There isn't really much difference to it. I really like it a lot. These two have the same, or the Western Electric and Northern Telecom, those have the same, or those have similar dials. I'm not 100% sure. I guess I should do my research on what types of dials they have. The Northern Electric has a nice dial, not one that I'm real partial to, but it is nice. I have two automatic electric 500 phones. One is this same color that you see here, this jadeite green, and then one is black. I don't use the black one just because I really don't like these dials. I don't like the way that they feel. But the green one, the bell works, so that's why I keep that. With the pulse to tone converter that you'll see later in the video, the pulse to tone converter doesn't pick up the pulses from this dial very well. It'll pick up some of them, but not all of them. It could just be both of my units that do this. It could be this type of dial. I'm not sure. I do need to look into that. And then finally, I have a Northern Telecom 554B wall phone. I actually got this phone new old stock, right out of the box. Never been used. I want to say mine is from the late 70s, early 80s. I like this phone a lot. It hangs above my microwave refrigerator here in the room, and I use it as my quote-unquote kitchen phone. The bell does not work in this one either. New old stock, kind of surprised. I don't know that much about bells or the insides of these phones. That's something that I'm trying to work towards understanding, and I do want to get the bells replaced in all of these, or get them repaired or wired correctly, whichever the issue is. But yeah, these are all the phones that I have. I really like all of them. Like I said, I really prefer the G-type handset. So that Galleon, I like it because it's bakelite and I like the style of it, but the others are my preferred phones. So devices that I use this OBI 200 VoIP unit. It works through Google Voice, so free service, doesn't cost me anything. And I have free internet here at the university, so you know, it doesn't cost me anything. We actually, all of the rooms currently are provided with a landline that has its own number, that any number can call it, and then you can make calls that are local calls only to this. So I do have my Google Voice number forwarded over to the landline here. So if you call that, it does ring the central office line that I have here. I'm not using the OB High device at the moment. We no longer have wired internet here, and this thing has an Ethernet jack on the back, or Ethernet port. But it also has, you can also get a wireless dongle. Now we do have really nice high-speed internet here. I don't usually have any problems with it. Sometimes it goes down, but I mean overall it's really nice. But for some reason this device, and I'm working on this with IT, but this device is somewhat choppy on the Wi-Fi here, only here. I've tested it at home and it works great. I've also tested it at McDonald's. I know that sounds strange, but I just needed to go somewhere else and test just to see if it was my device that was having problems or the internet here. And unfortunately it is the internet here. But like I said, I'm trying to get that worked out. So it is a really nice device. If you're going to use this with rotary phones, you do have to get a pulse to tone converter, which I'll talk about here later. This does only work with tone. But for the moment, I am using the central office line, and I'll be using that until they do cut those off. That should be sometime the end of the summer, or into the maybe middle of the fall semester. But it hasn't been said when that's going to be yet. So for this particular device, this is the next link of my chain in my system. This is the X-Link Gateway BTTN version. This one allows for a pass-through. So this is a device that will hook up to 3 cell phones via Bluetooth to your line, and each one of those phones has its own line, has its own ring. So my cell phone's line 1, which is on the very right side. When my cell phone rings, it rings through that, and I can answer it on these phones. And it has a long single ring. And then the second button there, the one in the center, that one is my roommate's cell phone. That one ring, it has 2 rings. And then the third cell phone, or the third line there, whenever I am on duty, or I'm a resident advisor, I hook the duty phone up to that so that I can answer on any of these phones, and I can just keep it in one location. So that gives you up to 3 lines, but this particular model allows you to have 4 lines. So when you pick up the phone, whichever is the first phone in line. So if my roommate's the only one here and it's not hooked up to a landline, he can just dial out without selecting that particular line. But since we do have a central office line plugged in, which is in the central office line is the top plug in there, I believe it is marked on the back. When you pick up the handset and that's plugged in and dial, it will dial out through that line. If you want to select another line, so either mine, my roommate's, or that duty phone, you will just dial whichever line you're wanting, and then you will flash. So you'll just hang up real fast and hang up the receiver fast, or just push the button down, and it'll flash over to that line, and you can dial out dial a number, and it will call through that particular cell phone. And then the bottom port there, I believe, is the one that goes out to the phones. And then that one goes into my next device, which is this Viking Model RG10A ring booster. So that Bluetooth gateway that you just saw, that one works really well with rotary phones. That one you don't have to have a pulse-to-tone converter if you are not plugged into a landline. So if you're plugged into the landline and that line only accepts or will only accept tone and will not accept pulse, then the unit, even when calling through a cell phone, will not accept pulses. So you will have to have a pulse-to-tone converter. But if you're just using it by itself, just with a cell phone, a pulse-to-tone converter is not needed. But a lot of homes these days that do have actual service, phone service from the central office, a lot of those services don't put out enough voltage to ring these old 500 bell ringers. So the unit that I have, that X-Link gateway, it actually does put out enough voltage to ring ring the phone by my desk, and then that green phone But that green phone is kind of weak. And it's just because it just doesn't put out enough ring voltage. So this particular device, it just has a line to go into the back and a line to go out of the back. So I just kind of put it in series in my system here, but that ups the voltage to ring up to, and don't quote me on this, but up to seven of these 500 style phones with the bell ringers. Whereas my unit doesn't have enough power for that. Some of the phones that I have, I thought perhaps they just didn't have enough voltage. I've tested a few more and they still don't ring, so I'm going to look into those, but I just wanted to make sure that I did have enough power going to those to ring the system. So the next thing that I have in there is this pulse-to-tone converter from Old Phone Works. It wasn't necessarily a cheap device, but I really needed it. So when I first got here to the university, my first year, you know, I couldn't dial out at all. I could only answer the phone, but I couldn't dial out. And so I had to get a pulse-to-tone converter, which when you dial, I'll actually demonstrate here with the phone up to the microphone. So you can hear the dial tone there, and whenever you dial, you'll hear the pulses, and then the tone will come after. So this is a 6. And so every time that you dial, you'll dial the number, and then that little device that's in series in the system, it will pick up and say, okay, you know, that was 6 pulses, so it'll play the tones for the digit 6. So I'm going to go through and show you the setup, how everything's wired. So I'm actually going to be connecting everything in this particular drawing up to the central office line. But whenever I get this VoIP system fully working, then everything will just be connected to that. So the next device that I have is the X-Link Bluetooth gateway. So the way that's wired in is, like I said, there is the central office line, and there's the phone line in there. I do believe I had that backwards. The central office line is in the bottom, and then the phone line is in the line out to the phones is in the back. So I obviously have, you know, a line going from the central office into the central office line. And then the device I have next is that Viking ring booster. So there's a line that runs out from that device into this Viking to boost the rings from not only the central office line, but from the gateway itself. Next in series from that, I have the pulse-to-tone converter, which is wired just straight in there. That way that all of the phones that are plugged into this, the pulses will be converted to tones. And then from there, currently I am using this 5-port phone jack splitter, which then has you know, multiple phones plugged into it, as you can see here. And I am using that, and I do have more than 5 phones on here, but I have some long wires running, and then I have some splitters on the end of those wires. It's actually kind of chaotic, but in the next bit, whenever I do the actual phone setup, and in my Castle Fortification video series, you'll see a video in there about me setting up the phone system itself, and it will be a little different from this. Everything from that phone, from that pulse-to-tone converter all the way back to the central office line, that will still be the same. But I wanted to go through and show everything that I had. But yeah, so, you know, this is my setup. If you have any questions on any of the devices that I'm using, or how I have anything set up, or, you know, you just want to share some information, feel free to leave a message in the comments, and I'll get back to you. And if you have any information that you think might be beneficial to me on down the line, you know, send me a message, send me an email, anything you like. But so that's my video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.